In this video, we're going to factor quadratic expressions of the form ax squared plus. So these are expressions that have a coefficient in front of the x squared term other than 1 or 0. The first example, factor fully. A is 2x squared plus 7x plus 3. So the first step, we need to consider common factors. In this case, there are no common factors other than 1 for each of these terms. The second step is to find the key number, which is a times c. So we take the first number, which is a, and multiply it by our second number, c. And we get that 2 times 3 equals 6. So now what we need to do is we take this key number and we have to decompose this middle term into two integers that multiply to the key number and add to b, or the middle number. So we leave our first term the way it was at 2x squared, and we also leave the last term. Now we need to decompose this 7x into two numbers that add to give 7x and multiply to give our key number. These numbers are 6x and 1x. Our next step is to common factor twice. So in the next line, what we do is we take the common factor of the first two terms and the common factor, and we also common factor the second set of terms. So if we common factor the first two terms, we get a common factor of 2x, and what's left if we factor it out is x plus 3. The second set of terms greatest common factor is 1. So we common factor out the 1, and we're left with x plus 3. Finally, we look at the two expressions that we have here that are split up by the addition sign in the middle, and we notice that they both have a common factor of x plus 3. So we write out the common factor, and we're left with 2x and 1. Our next example is 3x squared minus 5x minus 2. So once again, we check for common factor, and we do not have one. So we go ahead and find the key number, which is 3 times negative 2. Always keep the sign that's in front of the term. And we get a key number of negative 6. So we have to go down and decompose our middle term of negative 5x into two terms that add to give negative 5 and multiply to negative 6. So we leave our first term as 3x squared. Our last term is negative 2. And we decompose the negative 5 into the two numbers, which are positive 1 and negative 6. These two numbers add to negative 5x and multiply to negative 6. The next step, once again, we common factor, and the common factor of the first two terms is going to be x, and we're left with 3x plus 1. Second set of numbers, if there's a negative sign in between these numbers, we must always factor out the negative. So we have negative, and the greatest common factor is 2, and we're left with 3x plus 1. Finally, we common factor out the common binomial in both of these parts of the expression, which is 3x plus 1, and we're left with x and minus 2. The last example that we are going to do is C, 10x squared minus 22x plus 4. So going back to our initial steps, the first step we have to do is look for a common factor. In this case, we have a common factor of 2 in each of these three terms. So we common factor out the 2, and we're left with 5x squared minus 11x plus 2. Now, within this second factor, we have a complex trinomial, or trinomial with the a value other than 1. So we need to factor it using decomposition. We first look for the key number, So 5 times 2 is 10. And now we decompose the middle term into the two numbers that add to give negative 11 and multiply to give 10. We rewrite our first term and our third term, and we find the two numbers, which happen to be negative 10x and negative 1x. Always also important to make sure that we leave the common factor outside of the brackets when we're doing the second set of factoring. In the next step, we're going to set up square brackets, and we common factor the first set of terms, and its greatest common factor is 5x. Inside the brackets, we're left with x minus 2. We common factor the second set, and we common factor at a negative 1, and we're left with x minus 2. In our final step, we write down our common factor and complete the factoring process inside the square brackets, factoring out the common binomial of x minus 2, and we're left with 5x minus 1.